Link TV, connecting you to the world. Link TV is viewer supported. Watch more at linktv.org.
Link TV presents Mosaic World News from the Middle East. Here are today's top stories.
Je veux aller en Palestine.
Flytilla activists demand the right to visit Palestine. Yemenis condemn foreign meddling while Syrians reject Assad's dialogue. And Egyptians renew their commitment to put the revolution first. Mosaic World News from the Middle East begins now.
Israeli authorities have arrested pro-Palestinian activists from different countries arriving at Ben Gurion Airport.
Look how scared they are that people are coming to protest non-violently against an apartheid state, against a siege, against an entire civilian population.
To this direction.
End this occupation now.
Israel says about 30 of the activists are being questioned, while over 24 detainees have already been expelled. Hundreds of activists planned to fly into Ben Gurion Airport near Tel Aviv on a mission to peacefully protest the Israeli blockade of Gaza. But many of them did not even manage to get on their flights because Israeli authorities had provided a blacklist to foreign airlines to reject the activists before boarding.
Angry at being denied boarding passes to Tel Aviv, over 600 European supporters of the Palestinian cause had planned to visit the West Bank and Jerusalem al-Quds.
This is an invitation we have to go to Bethlehem. All of us were invited by the cultural center called Al-Arad.
But as they arrived at their airports, such as London, Paris, Geneva and Brussels, they were denied check-in and boarding under the orders of Israel. Israel has issued a notice to all airlines, asking them to refuse carrying blacklisted passengers, that is, these passengers. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has insisted that it has the right to prevent entry of whom he called disruptors and provocateurs. But these passengers say not only they have the right to leave their own borders, but also Israel's actions are illegal.
We can see that Roissy-Charles de Gaulle airport is under Israeli occupation now, and also Israel is showing that there is not only one siege, one blockade on Gaza, but there is a siege on the whole Palestine, on the West Bank too.
Over the past few weeks and months, Israel has blocked humanitarian flotillas from entering Gaza, with many of them now blocked in Greek waters. The demonstrators right behind me say they will not stop this time, and that more demonstrations are on the way to protest against Israel's blockade of Gaza. But for these demonstrators, being blacklisted by Israel is a sharp reminder of the Second World War.
This for me is a reminder of the Nazi period, when French authorities agreed to hunt blacklisted Jews. The only difference this time is that it's we and our Palestinian friends. Frankly, I'm ashamed of my country.
These passengers say they will take up the matter at the United Nations. Anisto Proy, Press TV, Paris.
Anti-regime protesters have taken to the streets across Jordan, calling for the resignation of the country's prime minister. The protesters started to assemble outside mosques in several cities after Friday prayers. They've also been calling for the dissolution of the lower house of parliaments. They also called on the government to punish corruption. The protesters also shouted slogans rejecting last week's reshuffle of the prime minister's cabinet. This is the 5th week in a row that nationwide protests have rocked the country.
Anti-regime protesters in Bahrain have taken to the streets in several towns and villages around the capital, Manama. Protesters have come out in Sitra, Mahaza, and Ekher, calling for the downfall of the regime. The protesters come after the main opposition group Al-Wasat called for a day of nationwide protests.
Thousands of citizens gathered in the Tagir or Change Squares in a number of Yemeni cities, including the capital, Sana'a, and Taiz, on what they named the Friday to Reject mediation, alluding to the regional and international interference in the revolution. This comes one day after Yemeni President Ali Abdullah Saleh appeared on TV for the first time since he survived an assassination attempt earlier last month. Several neighborhoods of Sana'a also witnessed demonstrations supporting Saleh. Hundreds of thousands rallied in Yemen's Ib province to reject what they referred to as the Saudi and American mandate and demanded the prosecution of the president and his relatives responsible for the killing of the Yemeni people. Protesters renewed their call for the formation of a transitional revolutionary council. In Bayda province, the revolutionaries organized a massive demonstration to reject regional and international intervention in the Yemeni revolution. They also demanded the formation of a transitional revolutionary council. Freedom Square in the city of Taiz also witnessed massive demonstrations to express the rejection of what the revolutionaries called regional and international intervention in the Yemeni revolution. The protesters chanted slogans affirming to continue their revolution until its goals are achieved. Joining us from Taiz is our Al Jazeera correspondent, Hamdi Al-Bukhari. Hamdi, what differentiated this day in Taiz from others?
Yes, Jamal, this day was truly distinct. It comes only a few hours after the address of President Ali Abdullah Saleh, which was recorded in Saudi Arabia. These masses that gathered in great numbers seem to be responding to the address, saying the revolution is ongoing and that it is impossible to change the popular opinion against the current regime, or what the revolutionaries call the remnants of the regime. Indeed, today, the city of Taiz and many other Yemeni cities witnessed large crowds in the squares to confirm that they are indifferent to Ali Abdullah Saleh's proposals and that current propositions do not meet the demands of the revolutionaries. In turn, the revolution will continue until the very end and until all its goals are attained. This Friday was also different due to the way the president's address was understood. It seemed that Saleh was expressing the regional and international support for his ruling regime. In turn, the revolution today is facing many challenges, and not just in relation to the remnants of Saleh's regime in the country, but also regional and international challenges. They are interested in thwarting the revolution, and this is why the revolutionaries were even more determined and committed today.
In Syria, 8 civilians were killed and a number of others were injured on what anti-regime activists called the No Dialogue Friday, as the American and French ambassadors visited Homa, and Damascus accused the U.S. of inciting further aggression.
The surprise of the No Dialogue Friday came when the U.S. ambassador joined anti-Syrian regime protesters. Robert Ford's visit dominated the news in Hama Thursday night. The next morning, he woke up in a city ignited by masses that demanded vengeance for what they described as Assad Sr.'s 1982 oppression, rejecting dialogue with the son. The U.S. State Department confirmed that the visit of its ambassador to Hama was in support of the Syrian people, while the Syrian Foreign Ministry condemned Ford's violation of diplomatic norms. The Syrian ministry said he met a number of the saboteurs in Hama and incited them to engage in more violence and protest and to refuse dialogue. The Syrian president's advisor, Butayna Sha'ban, saw in Ford's visit evidence of the West's attempt to incite a few people in Syria.
Never before did an ambassador visit a city with a problem, like the case of Hama, without first of all a statement. And most important is the fact that the U.S. State Department issued a statement saying the ambassador is in the city of Hama and intends to stay until the next day. What is more important than all of this is that the U.S. ambassador arrived to Hama at a time when a meeting was being held between the residents, mosque imams, and the civil authorities in the city of Hama. The meeting aimed at finding a solution to the problem. This means that his arrival is an attempt to prevent solving the problem. I wonder how the American ambassador was able to reach Hama, as roads are being blocked by saboteurs, rioters, and gunmen. Who helped him reach Al-Sraja Mosque in Hama at 6 p.m.? How did he not encounter one of the gunmen in the streets who have blocked employees in Hama from reaching their jobs for the fourth day in a row?
The French ambassador to Syria, Eric Chevalier, visited one of the largest hospitals in the city of Hama on Thursday and expressed France's commitment to standing by the victims. In parallel to Al-Asi Square in Hama, many other Syrian regions witnessed massive demonstrations. Protesters held banners rejecting dialogue with the regime and demanded the resignation of the president. In addition, protesters chanted against Hezbollah.
In a massive demonstration in Egypt, hundreds of thousands gathered in Cairo's Tahrir Square. Protesters carried the slogan "Revolution First" and demanded to try the figureheads of the former regime, those involved in corruption cases and accused of killing protesters. It is worth noting that security forces were absent from the square. In Mansour City, located on the Nile Delta, about 10,000 protesters gathered at Al-Mahata Square in front of the provincial government.
Under the slogan, protests began from Tahrir Square. Thousands rallied to remind people of the scenes of the January 25th revolution. The square hasn't seen such a large crowd in months. The participants vary in their ideological orientations and political affiliations, but their demands were unified. They demanded to try the figureheads of the former regime, especially its head, Hosni Mubarak, and to purify the current government of all protectors of the old regime.
In what way is Mubarak imprisoned? They've put him in a five-star hotel with servants and people to help him. He isn't imprisoned, his two sons are. He is in a five-star hotel. So put him here in our place and we'll go there. Let's exchange. Put us in the prison that he is in now and he can come and live in the village that we live in, which has no water and garbage in the streets.
Perhaps these people's anger was mostly fueled by the judicial decisions recently issued to acquit a number of figureheads of Mubarak's regime. Many people consider these verdicts unjust.
The people were shocked by the verdicts exonerating 6 ministers of the former regime who were charged with corruption and embezzling the people's money, as well as the release of police officers accused of killing revolutionaries. We came here today to announce our rejection of this deferral of justice and indulgence for the deposed president, and his family.
The call for demonstrations was sent out by the April 6th Youth Movement and the Revolutionary Youth Alliance. The Muslim Brotherhood did not clarify its position until a few days ago, when it announced its determination to participate. The Brotherhood did not escape the allegations of trying to take advantage of the demonstration, but it justified its position by saying that the decision to participate was made after its political rival's slogan, Constitution First, which the Brotherhood does not accept, was given up. It appears that the protesters decided to set aside the dispute over whether to write the Constitution first or conduct parliamentary elections first. Therefore, their top priority remains insisting the demands of the revolution are met. Sally Nabil, BBC.
In the wait for the Security Council's vote, South Sudan will officially take on the mission of securing a new country, which is facing a number of security challenges despite Juba's assertion that its forces are fully ready. It is certain that Juba has finished its preparations for the ceremony to declare its independence by constitution, claim peace between the two countries, and announce that the government and people are aware that independence is the first step in the journey to a sustainable development. Sami Shinawi reports from Juba.
With Independence Day festivities, Juba began an unusual day. Both sides of Freedom Square are filled with military squads and a crowd that can be described as carefully selected to welcome the guests of the newborn country. This was the final scene of the welcoming ceremony. Euphoria permeated the atmosphere among the people of South Sudan, anticipating a new history to be made. Most political parties agree that the most important document for the new country is the first constitution for the Republic of South Sudan.
Now, the Republic of South Sudan has a constitution ready for writing the basic laws of the new country. We congratulate the people of South Sudan for declaring independence on July 9th.
South Africa will be the first country to be given the honour to secure the newborn country, despite Juba's assertion that its forces deployed across the city are fully ready.
They are especially ready in Juba. In our province and 9 other provinces, the forces are all ready to welcome July 9th, Independence Day of South Sudan.
But the government of the South, which is determined to rule the country's affairs, still needs to put an end to the danger from dissident forces that threaten to storm Juba on the dawn of its day of independence. The government also needs to provide a solution to security breaches in the next phase, after the North completely closes its border with the South. Here, history will be rewritten for President Bashir, who was active in this part of his country, which has been one united nation despite the wars until tomorrow. Sami Shinawi, Dubai TV.
Fallout over the recent brief detention of 2 prominent rabbis, Yaakov Yosef and Dov Lior, over their endorsement of the controversial King's Torah book is ongoing. Hartman Institute research fellow Yossi Klein Halevi told IBA's Eli Wogelenter earlier this week that he is highly critical of the religious Zionist leadership for how they dealt with this issue.
I think that Israeli democracy is strong enough and resilient enough to survive the publication of a fringe book by an insignificant figure in the religious world, filled with poisonous theology, but basically confined to the fringe. The problem isn't Israeli democracy; it's Israeli Judaism, the religious Zionist community specifically. And here, I would say that this book and the endorsement of this book by several prominent rabbis is a clear and immediate threat to the integrity of religious Zionism. The way in which leading figures in religious Zionism, including otherwise moderate rabbis, rallied around Rabbi Lior and Rabbi Yosef against the supposed persecution or intrusion of the secular system into the religious sphere is, I think, itself the problem. That's what worries me, far more than the book itself. And the fact that the religious Zionist community has not taken a decisive stand to expel from its midst this kind of poisonous racist theology. And there's nothing more dangerous than combining racism with theology. We see that happening in the Muslim world. The fact that the religious Zionist community would sooner tolerate Jewish jihadists than see their power or their honor infringed. This is the concern. They speak about the honor of the Torah, the honor of the rabbinate. What honor and what Torah?
But one of the moderate rabbis, Rabbi Druckmann, he said that he was against it theologically, but he was upset at the way the rabbis were being treated.
You know what, I'll give the rabbis in the religious Zionist community their due if they speak out as vehemently against the racist theology that was endorsed by Rabbi Lior as they do against the procedures of the police and the legal system here. I want to see that same visceral, emotional rage about the desecration of the Torah being committed by Rabbi Lior and his friends as they display toward the police and the legal system.
But to them, it was an insult to their whole way of being, the way the rabbis were treated by the police and the prosecutors.
The real insult to their entire way of being is the publication of that book and the relative silence with which that book was greeted in the religious Zionist community. That's the Chilul Hashem, the desecration of God's name. Whether or not the police or the legal system acted wisely, I think that's a legitimate question that should be debated. But there's a far deeper question here for the religious Zionist community, and once again, it's avoiding a self-confrontation.
The Rafah border crossing that separates Egypt from the Gaza Strip has returned to its previous status, and the difficulties in crossing the border are back. My colleague Muhammad Al-Madhoun reports from Gaza.
On May 28th, Egypt announced that it would open the Rafah border crossing almost entirely and permanently. However, only 2 days after the new opening, Egypt retracted its decision. The crossing returned to the status it held in the pre-revolution era, a mere fence that separates Gaza from the world.
هذا ليس معبر رفح. This
is not the Rafah crossing. Reaching it is the final station in a journey of suffering and waiting that people all around the world call traveling. The first part of this arduous journey begins here, at the Travelers Registration Center, where hundreds of people wishing to leave Gaza are crammed every day. They have to reserve a spot on the list that does not allow more than 300 travelers per day. The best possible outcome for those registering today is the chance to travel in 2 weeks.
They say they've facilitated travel for the Palestinians. Where are these facilitations? I haven't seen any easing of the procedure at all. Those who want to cross the border have a reason. They're either sick or want to visit their children or relatives. That's all. No one can reach the crossing and is willing to go through this humiliation unless they have a reason.
This is torture of humanity. Where can one get his rights? This is wrong. Both the Palestinians and the Egyptians are responsible. There's nothing but suffering. Arab life is nothing but pain.
So Egypt did not honor its promise to facilitate travel through the crossing. However, some believe that the situation is even worse now than it was during Mubarak's time in power. After the massacre on the Freedom Flotilla, 500 travelers were allowed to cross daily. Today, the maximum number of travelers allowed to cross is 300 per day. El Damir Association for Human Rights says the facilitations that Egypt promoted are nothing but illusions and media propaganda if the status quo remains and each person can only travel once every 15 years.
Problem is exacerbated and the suffering increasing. I think the Egyptian government should clarify its position on these facilitations. It should also stop dealing with Gaza as a security issue and view the Strip as a political issue and an urgent humanitarian issue.
The youth of the popular movement to open the Rafah crossing took the initiative upon themselves and planned a series of activities, including organizing sit-ins and rallies in coordination with the youth of the Egyptian Revolution. One of their activities was this children's march, and work is underway for organizing a 1 million-person march on both sides of the crossing in September.
We protested today in front of the gate of the Rafah crossing to address humanity in revolutionary Egypt, the free Egypt, Egypt, the mother, and Egypt, the land of the Nile, that set the most wonderful example in preserving Egypt's Arab identity with its children's blood. We came carrying our childhood in one hand, and in the other, a shroud awaits us, as our eyes yearn for hope from behind the fence in front of the border.
Gaza understands the political and security conditions that Egypt is undergoing, and it also understands that pressure was probably placed on the Egyptian government and the military council to restore the restrictions on movement through the crossing. However, Gaza will not remain silent as it witnesses the ugly legacy of the past transferred in order for the situation at the Rafah crossing to remain unchanged, probably the only remainder of pre-revolution Egypt.
The views expressed on Mosaic are from contributing broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible by grants from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, the Firedoll Foundation, and by support of viewers like you. Thank you. Watch Mosaic World News online. Stay up to date with breaking news, read our blog, get transcripts of past shows, and more at linktv.org/mosaic.
This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. network dedicated to global and national news, uncompromising documentaries, and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.